Last week I spent some time going over the first section in part two for project three. And so now this week I want to dive into the very first part of the second section. There are actually 4 bullet points that go with the second section. And because of what is involved with each, I'm actually going to break those down into the next few weeks. So, this week's announcement, we're going to focus specifically on the first bullet point. Now, in the second section, it talks about how you're going to use the team performance metrics, which is the second document in the supporting documents. And so it's the list of teachers A through T, monthly calls, overdue, monthly student calls, texts, average non-workers, and so forth. So you're going to use all that data to come up with the second part or second section. And so it basically says that using the collected data, create graphical representations of the trends you find and report it back to your colleagues. So this week, we're going to focus just on the first bullet point, which is to draw logical connections between the frequency of communication to students and regular submission of work in the course. And it says to do the following: use a visual representation such as a clustered column graph or Pareto chart to show the relationship between the number of monthly calls and text attempts and the average percentage of non-workers. Discuss your findings. Does there seem to be any association? I want to focus on the first sub-bullet point, and all that we are going to go through in this announcement is how to create those charts. And so I have actually chosen to use Google Sheets because it is universal and available to everyone. So what I have done on the right side of my screen is I have gone through, because it wants us to grab 3 things. It wants monthly calls, text attempts, and average percent of non-workers. So I've grabbed all the teachers, A through T, in my first column. I've grabbed the average number of monthly calls in my second column. In my third column, I have the average monthly text contacts per person. And then I went ahead and actually, even though it's listed as percentages for the total non-workers, I just went ahead and made that numerical because of the formatting of the graph. So what I do is, once I have those in Google Sheets, is I highlight all columns and all rows of that. And you'll look for the icon in the toolbar that's the chart. And so you'll click on a chart, and there are different options of charts that you can choose from. And so if I go to chart type and go down, it gives me some suggested charts, but the one that I'm going to choose is this combo chart in the line group. You can look down and see that there's a number of different options, but this combo is what we're looking for. So when I click combo, it gives me 2 lines and 1 bar, but that doesn't really necessarily effectively give me what I'm looking for. So there's some adjustments that we're going to make to that. So I'm going to go up to customize beside setup, and when I click on customize, I'm going to go to series. And so at first it has a drop down that says apply to all series. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to change, because I want right now the number of monthly calls is a bar and the other 2 are lines. I want the monthly text and monthly calls to look very similar and be bar graphs. So I'm going to go to monthly text, and I want to change it from a line to a column. And so now I have those 2 options. And so the problem now is that my numbers down here are so small in my percentages. So if I go up and I close, if I widen this just a little bit so you can see, I have all my numbers on the left. I want this line graph to go off of a different set of numbers on the right in terms of a vertical axis. So to do that, I'm going to go back to series, and I want to change it to total non-workers, and I want to leave it as a line graph, but instead of the left axis, I want it to be on the right axis. Now you have some data that you can really use. You can look and see that my percentages kind of go up and down, and you have a graph that you can use. Now you can go in, I suggest if you do this, when you go to chart style, you don't necessarily mess with the title, but chart and axis titles. It just grabbed all the data from the way that I had them in my column. So I would change this to something like average monthly calls, texts, and non-workers. Something simple enough to where it fits. You can even play around with the titles for the different items if you would like, but you can then take this graph chart depending on the type of machine you have. Now I have a Mac, so I can use Shift Command 4 and I get a little bullseye, and then I can just highlight that graph as it is, take a picture of it, and I can pull it over, save that image, and pull it over into my project. If you do not have a Mac, your machine, whether it be a Chromebook or a PC, has built-in options in order to grab a screen capture or a snapshot of something to grab that graph and move it over into your project. And then from there, you'll actually just go through and start analyzing the data to see what the trends tell you. But I just wanted to go through and give you some directions and some helpful tips on how to create that graph to use for your project.